from a place where it all of a sudden became summer over the weekend. This is the Arnett Show, and I believe it's episode 21, brought to you by the people who brought you me and my lovely wife Brianna, who's with me today.
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
I told her to have high energy at the beginning of this, and as you can tell, it's working. So glad to be with you guys again today. It's like number one rule of radio, by the way, is you never talk in the plural, because you want to be talking to you, the listener, right now. You are listening to this. It's just a conversation between me and you. You're not in an audience. You're not in a crowd. It's just me and you. You're in your car. You're watching this on YouTube, or you're listening on the gym. You're getting pumpy right now. And it's just us and you right now. Right now you're talking to the Arnetts. It's a one-sided conversation. There's no everybody. Everybody is no one, and someone is you.
Well, fine. Just take it out. Take out the everybody if that's what you want.
No, I don't edit. So that's what's happening. So we come to you today after a couple of weeks off. Basically, I've gotten to a point where, like, if I don't have anything to say, I just don't feel like doing this. So today, though, we do have things to say because we just took a giant trip. This is like big life update. If you haven't heard it from us yet on the Arnett Show, big life update program, and this could be a moment where the show shifts from what it was in the past to kind of like a new adventure type of thing. So I don't know any other way to introduce today's topic other than to say we just took, let's say today is the 27th. So 2 weeks ago, we got on a plane and headed to Guatemala.
Yes, we did.
And
got stuck in Mexico.
Yes. So we're just going to walk you through like everything that happened in our trip. The main reason, of course, why we're doing this is because we don't want to have one-on-one conversations with anyone. We'd rather just have you listen to this and just kidding. But, for those of you who, maybe we don't have you're just fans. You're fans of the program, and we want to clue you in to what we were doing with our life. And so that's what we're going to do. So, basically what happened was we got invited. We've been in this process for how many months, would you say?
I don't know how many months I would say. Okay.
Well, thanks. And we been in this process of possibly becoming missionaries in Guatemala for quite some time. We've been praying about it. We've been filling out paperwork, and about a month ago, we went to a week-long training kind of a thing in a town near us called Visalia, and by the end of it, we were like, okay, this was awesome, and what's the deal? Are we going to be asked to come on staff? Are we going to get an interview? What's going to happen? And at that point, we hadn't had an interview yet. And so my boss, which I don't know if this is great advice, but he said to me, sometimes you just got to lay out the fleece and let God answer. And at the time, I thought that was great. And then I read into the actual story about Gideon in the Bible, who he was talking about. And God was mad at that guy. But nonetheless, we were still praying that if God wanted us to keep going down this path to Guatemala, that maybe we could get an interview by the end of that week, and hopefully in April, because if not, we would be stuck not going on the interview until the summer months. And we wanted to go on the interview as quickly as possible so that if we did get accepted, we could start support raising and raising funds to be able to go hopefully sometime next year and get down there. So
can you explain to the listeners what laying out the fleece means? Because it's kind of a weird thing to say.
Yeah, so in one of the books of the Bible, I'm not sure where, I forget now, I have to look it up, but
the Bible,
is it it might be in Judges. I think it is in Judges now I think about it. So was Gideon a judge, or was he just a mighty man of valor, as the Bible calls him? So
we need to do some research.
Yeah, we need to do some research. I would have researched it more, except I didn't expect to be talking about that. But anyway, in the Bible, God calls Gideon out, and he says that, you're going to beat all these people. And he's like, I don't know, man. And so Gideon basically doesn't trust God. He's unsure. Like, is this really what you want me to do? And so he tells God, and I forget the order, but he says, okay, God, if you really want me to go and do this battle, then show me a sign by making the ground completely dry outside. And I'm going to lay this fleece out there and make the fleece wet with dew in the morning. And so sure enough, God shows him that sign. He wakes up the next morning and the ground is dry and the fleece is wet. And Gideon's like, okay.
I see you.
Yeah, that was pretty good. But just in case, this coming morning, do the opposite. Make the ground wet and the fleece dry.
Could you imagine being God? Being like, are you serious? You really need me to do this after I just did that thing for you?
Yeah, and so he did it nonetheless, and so then Gideon had the sign to go to battle and whatnot. And so that was kind of the advice I was given. Not sure if it's great advice, but I followed it, respected it, and we ended up getting an interview by the end of the week. The training got done on Friday. We woke up Saturday morning and had been invited down for an interview in Guatemala in April, and we decided that we were going to go. And hold on just a second, because we had a cat in a place he's not supposed to be. Right now, she's getting up to get the cat. She's setting her headphones down. She's walking over. It is Marty. Oh, he's meowing. He's not happy. We just bought this new basket that is like a blanket holder for near the couch. But of course, that equals cat bed to the cats. So we got the interview down in Guatemala for our spring break time, and along the way, as we've been doing this, we've had to take time off of work, time off of school, and that kind of stuff. And each time we've kind of said, all right, God, like if you want this to work out, then just somehow open the doors for us to go. So tell people what happened when you had to ask for time off for the week where we went to Visalia.
Yeah, so I have in a way, 3 different bosses that I needed to get this approved by. Make sure that they were all okay with me leaving. And then also 4 different professors, and I had an exam the week that we were planning on being gone. And so when we first got invited to go to the training, I was like, there's no way I cannot miss a week of work and a week of school. That's just too much to ask for me. And then it's like, well, I guess if this is what God wants us to do, I will just ask these people and see if it's okay. And it was a unanimous decision that all of them said that I could go. They're like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, and it was crazy because there was no, oh, I don't know, we'll see if it works out. Like, every single person you asked seemed to just, boom, let you go.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Also, it's my life. They can't tell me what to do.
Right. But we were kind of taking that as like, all right, if this is really what you want us to do, this is a big mountain for us to overcome. And God just kind of laid the mountains flat, you know. It reminds me of the song from Handel's Messiah. Every valley will be exalted. And then it talks about the mountains being leveled. Yeah. So anyway, that happened then, and that was a couple months ago. And so after that training that we got cleared to go to, it ended up working out that we were able to go to Guatemala. And so I was looking for flights, and this is what I was looking for. I wanted to get flights that were most time efficient because we only had about 6 days total that we had to travel. So we were looking for flights that wouldn't have extremely long layovers. And so I was like, okay, we have kind of 3 options. We can fly on United, and that will take forever, and we'll get there late. That's out of the question. We could fly on American, which we could have done, except that we had to leave Friday night or early Saturday morning, and that would have put us in Guatemala not until 7 p.m. on Saturday night. And so the one deal I found, which was the same price as all the other ones, was flying on Aeromexico. And it was complicated, but it was supposed to be a 9-hour door-to-door, flight time, flying from Fresno to Guadalajara, Mexico, Guadalajara to Mexico City, and then Mexico City to Guatemala. I know it seems like a crazy flight plan, but it was the same price, the most efficient. It was supposed to be 9 hours. We'd leave Fresno at 11:30 p.m., get to Guatemala City by 9 a.m. It was going to be great, even though, I hate overnight flights, would have been extremely tired, but it seemed like a good idea until we got to we were getting ready to leave our house, and I get an email that says, "Hi, your flight has been delayed from Guadalajara, so good luck," basically. And we only had 1 hour layovers between each flight, which if everything was running on time would have been great, but it wasn't. And come to find out, you have to go through, if you're going to fly, through Mexico to get to another country, guess what? You have to go through customs in Mexico. And so that was a whole other thing. We got done in Mexico, and at the gate, I told the lady, I was like, "Hey, I got an email saying our flight is delayed, and if our flight is really delayed we're going to miss our flight to Guatemala." And she tried to tell me that, no, that's just the time you show up to the gate. And I was like, that's stupid. But also, even if that's just the time I show up to the gate, that's beyond the time that I need to get on the plane in Mexico City. So there's no way we're making that. And they basically told us, well, let's just fly to Guadalajara and we'll see what happens. Maybe you can get on another flight.
And then once we get to those airports, everything's in Spanish. And so it's like,
yeah,
we don't know what to do.
Yeah. And we speak some Spanish, but not enough yet. Eventually we'll be taking language school. And so we get to Guadalajara like 5 a.m, go through customs, finally get to our gate to where the next flight is going to be. And they ended up changing our flights. Well, our flight was supposed to leave at 8 a.m. and we could have gotten, our flight was supposed to there was another flight from Mexico City to Guatemala that would have left at like 10:30, except there was only one seat left on it. So we couldn't get on that, and we had to wait and not fly out of Mexico City until 4 p.m. So we got on our flight from Guadalajara, flew to Mexico City, got to Mexico City by like 8 a.m, and then we had all day in Mexico City unplanned. And so we said, well, let's take a little adventure and let's head out of the airport. And so that's what we did. And I've got video of that actually on YouTube. You can see our whole day of, what we did in Mexico City. Basically, we left the airport, went downtown and found a really nice breakfast place that ended up being nicer than either one of us imagined. Ended up being this rooftop restaurant thing.
It was beautiful. And the food was delicious.
Yeah, so you can check all that out on our YouTube channel. That's just The Arnett Show. If you're on our website, thearnettshow.com, you can click on the YouTube link, and you can find that. And I'll try to put that in the description, or the show notes, if I remember. So we finally got to Guatemala at about 9. We got to Guatemala probably like 7 or 8 or something like that. Got through customs. Didn't get to where we were going until 9:30. So we left our house at 9:30 p.m. on a Friday. Didn't get to where we were going.
We left at 8:30.
Oh, 8:30? Okay, yeah. 8:30 on a Friday. Didn't get to where we were going in Guatemala until 9:30 the next night.
It was a very, very long day.
Yeah. So if you think about it, that's like 24, because we probably got up at like 7 that morning. So 24, 36, 7, 8. We were up for like 38 hours straight that day. So as you can imagine, we were extremely tired by the time we got to Guatemala. But then the fun stuff happened. Not that Mexico City wasn't fun, and not that flying wasn't fun, because we actually got to be in first class on the trip from Mexico City to Guatemala. So that was fun.
Yeah, they treated us very nice.
Yeah, but it was at the expense of a day spent in Mexico City, which it was all right in the end. But anyway, so then we got to go to church with a couple missionaries in Guatemala there on Sunday, and that was awesome. And the guy preached a message that I wish that the church here would hear. Maybe I will talk about that on a following podcast, because that's a whole topic. So look forward to that.
And he preached the message in English, and it was translated to Spanish.
Yeah, he was a Canadian guy. It's really interesting. But it was so the first time I went to Guatemala, I went to a Guatemalan church, which is like an hour of worship, hour of message, and hopefully you're out of there before 1 or 2 in the afternoon. But the second time we went to a more American church. So I think that was your first time seeing like a Guatemalan church. How did you feel about that?
I liked it. I was expecting to only have about 3 songs and then sit down and move on with the message, and then the songs just kept coming. But the message was the same amount of time, it feels like, but the music was a lot.
Yeah, and I tell this story when I was in Guatemala the first time in 2016. The the woman gets up to, and it is the pastor's wife, Pastor Mario's wife. She gets up to. We had already been worshiping probably for like an hour, and she got up and said, "Oh well, I wrote this little song, and I'm gonna sing it." And she has this notebook, and I thought nothing of it until I realized that like the entire notebook, like 100 pages, is filled up with the song, and she sang the entire notebook. So that was a nice cultural experience a couple of years ago.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, but it was nice. It's nice either way. It's just a different culture. And so then Monday and Tuesday of that week, we were in sites, as they call them, as part of the ministry in Students International down there in Magdalena. It's actually called Magdalena Milpas Altas, which essentially the new Aaron translation means Magdalena way up, high. And so the first day we spent in the tutoring center. Tell our listeners about your experience in the tutoring center and what we did there.
Our listener, remember this is a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah, tell our listener.
Well, we got to go to different homes and visit the families. The missionary who we were with, she had to deliver like
a baby.
No.
Oh.
She had to deliver schedules to the families, and I got to make tortillas out of, what's that stuff called? Like
cornmeal.
Cornmeal?
Yeah. So we were in a home / store where they were happened to be making tortillas at the time, and I was telling Brianna, it's funny, when I was here a couple years ago, a family here had me make tortillas, and it's so much harder than it looks.
Yeah, I looked like a fool. So like they gave me a lump of cornmeal, and they like slap it on their hands together and make, a nice little round tortilla, and then put it on the stove. And my slapping of the tortilla did not go very well. So in the time that I made one very lopsided tortilla, they would make like 5 or 6. It was pretty embarrassing.
But it's good. It's a good experience. And I think that if we end up down there, I think you could learn how to do it.
Well, yeah.
I think if you spent like a day really learning and listening and like figuring out the technique, you could do it. But let me tell you, it is no easy task. So that was funny. And then the next day so that was the first night, and each of these days we kind of spent with a different missionary family, and just about, it got complicated, and I don't want to, bore you with all the details, but we got to meet like the whole staff there, basically. They spent us around because we only had 4 or 5 days in country. And so they had us get dinner or spend the night with another family, just to a missionary family, to, let them get to know us, let us get to know them.
Ask them questions, stuff like that.
And it was really good because we got to get a lot of different perspectives, because we were with like national staff, the Guatemalans, and we were also with, American staff. And so just to be able to get different perspectives, and they were able to tell us things that probably we never would have thought to ask. Mm-hmm. But they told us really interesting stories that helped us to get a better idea of, some of the stuff, unexpected things that we could face down there in Guatemala. And so we spent the next day with a missionary named Stephen, who I found out listens to this, or at least knows about it. He was telling one of the other missionaries about the show, so that was cool. So if you're listening, Stephen, shout out
to you, Stephen.
Yeah, fly Eagles fly. And like Stephen is my inspiration to be an Eagles fan, and so
it's a deep connection.
It really is, and
hopefully he feels the same way, or else this is really weird.
No, he doesn't care.
Okay, good.
So I'm just kidding, but
maybe we'll find out.
Yeah, can you explain like what we did with Steven then? And Steven is the lead of the sponsorship site, which, to kind of explain what that is, it's like if you've ever been to one of those concerts or seen on TV, the Compassion International, and how you can sponsor a kid for like $30 a month or whatever to go to school. Students International does that same kind of thing, and Steven is the head of that program.
Just so for a future note, I should tell them my experience with Compassion International in a future podcast. It's a cliffhanger.
Well, yeah, we'll talk about that in the future.
Yeah. So Steven, what he does is gets those the kids connected with sponsors, and they get to go to private school, right? Is that how it works? I don't know.
Well, no, some of them are in private schools, but a lot of them are in the public schools. But the thing is, in sponsorship, there at least, school in the public school is free, but school supplies and like the clothes they have to wear, the uniforms, are not free. So that's what they're paying for a lot of times.
That makes sense. So the students who are sponsored have to attend different activities, Bible studies with the sponsorship site. And so the day that we were there, they were doing like a Easter bash type thing. And the funny thing about in Guatemala is that they don't really do Easter. Like that's a very American thing. They do Semana Santa, which is Holy Week. So Stephen showed them different American traditions like plastic eggs and jelly beans. And we just did little like games and stuff. It was very much like what I would do in the after school program, but doing it with, Guatemalan kids. And they were high schoolers, right? They were like junior high through high school.
It was mainly the junior high group, and there was a couple high schoolers there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And they're funny. Like when you think of a typical junior higher, these kids are that as well. Even though they grow up so much differently, they still have the same little sassy personalities and there's little cliques.
Yeah, and it was a fun time. It was a nice time to see like something different, because we've been there during the summer ordinarily. So to see what they do during the off times, and then in this a special occasion what they do, during Semana Santa, and that was a whole interesting thing too. On Sunday of that week and a couple other days too, we were down in Antigua, which is like if you've heard of anywhere in Guatemala as a tourist, Antigua is the place. And they celebrate the Holy Week by carrying these processionals through the town. And it's basically like a big float, like a parade float type thing that they carry that has like Jesus on the cross. I think there's like other scenes as well. But
yeah, and it's like saints and stuff too, I think.
Yeah, and so they carry them through, and they have a band behind them, like a marching band that plays funeral music. And Alvaro and Marcela, the missionaries down there, were telling us that, they do all these processionals throughout the week, and the biggest one is on Good Friday, on Friday. The biggest one, there'll be 1 million people literally in Antigua, which does have a population like of way less than that. Very small. Well, not small. It's like one of the biggest towns, but it's not 1 million people. And so they do these processions, have the huge bash on Friday, and then Sunday comes and there's nothing. There's nobody on the streets.
Nada.
There's no celebration of the resurrection. And they've literally, just like the Catholic Church has done forever, they've just left Jesus on the cross. And they forget the good news that he rose again. And that's the whole point of Christianity. And so it's just kind of sad. And it's a reminder of, even in Guatemala, where we're going to be going, we're going to be working in communities that are not very well off financially, but even in the places where there are people who are a little bit better off, there's still the spiritually poor who don't have a good concept of Jesus and who he is and what he's done, and the miraculous redemption we have in him, because they've kind of just gone more for like tradition and that kind of stuff. And so it's sad, but it was interesting. I think it was good for us to see a different side of the culture.
Yeah, I think so. One thing interesting is I was talking with a custodian at the school that I work at, and he was asking like, oh, what'd you do for over spring break? And I was like, well, actually we went to Guatemala. And he goes, really? Like my mom's from Guatemala. I was like, oh, which area? And he said Antigua. And he asked me why Aaron and I went to Guatemala, and I explained that we were going to be missionaries. And he was like, really? Because all my family who lives there is very rich. I didn't think that they would need missionaries. And I'm like, well, if you drive 15 minutes up the hill, you'll see that they're not rich. And it's just interesting, the different perspectives that people have on different areas. So some people would think of Guatemala and they'll think like, oh, that's dirt poor. They've got nothing. They think of like the jungle where they're like having to go out and kill birds to eat for their own meal and stuff like that. And then other people are like, well, my uncle's a dentist and he lives in Guatemala and he lives in a mansion.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And they always give this statistic that in Guatemala, about 10% of the population controls 90% of the wealth in the country. And it's very evident. There's a giant split between those who have wealth and those who don't. And they're really, as far as I've been able to see, there's not really a like middle class. There's kind of like the haves and the have-nots.
Yeah.
And not that either one is better than the other. I think there's like certain parts of each culture, but there's definitely that are good. But there's definitely like two Guatemalas in a way, if
so.
Not even three, because there's you have like the haves who live in the cities, you have the people who live in the villages, but then there's even the people who don't even speak Spanish, and we haven't even encountered those people. But that's even another like subculture of Guatemala that people don't realize. I mean, that's another thing, and we could go into a whole thing, and maybe as the podcast kind of changes and we're talking more about our journey and everything, that's another thing to talk about, is that people, especially in the States, have basically a view that if you're south of the American border, you're Mexican. And that is not the case. Guatemalans and any other Central Americans, for that matter, are not Mexicans. They're all very, very different. And it's just very interesting to see. I
think one thing that was funny was how intrigued the Guatemalan people are with Mexican tacos. And that just goes to show you, like, they're like, oh, wow, Mexicans, like that's where the good tacos are. Whereas people in America are like, I'm sure Guatemala and everybody else has Mexican tacos too, but they don't have Mexican tacos.
Oh yeah. And I remember after I took my first trip, somebody literally asked me, oh, you must have had some awesome Mexican food. And I'm just like, listen to the sentence that you're saying. That's not even, I don't even comprehend how you think that. But anyway, they do. So yeah, that was kind of our week. We also got to see the director and his wife took us down to Guatemala City, and we got to see a Guatemalan Walmart, which was awesome. They sold motorcycles in the Walmart. They also, I mean, it was like the department stores of the past in the States was the Walmart there. I mean, they had everything, all the appliances and that kind of stuff that we don't really have here anymore. So that was interesting. We got to see we went to a mall and to a store. I'm trying to think of the name of that big department store we were at. I want to say.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but I don't know.
But basically it was I'm not sure, but it was basically like a Home Depot plus Bed Bath & Beyond and like a Home Goods, like anything you could ever imagine in there. And that's like the side of the society that like has the money. So it was just, I don't know, really interesting.
Got to go to Costco, which is called Price Mart.
Yeah, that was interesting too. And apparently it's like a collaboration, as from what I've been told, between Costco and Sam's Club, but they can only operate the Price Smarts in places where Costco and Sam's Club are not.
Okay, and you walk into this place and it even smells like American Costco.
It does. It's really interesting.
It's weird.
It makes you wonder, like, what is the Costco smell? It smells just like it really smells like home. It was interesting.
Yeah, and even the signs were like the same font and everything. It was exactly the same.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I had a good time. It was great. Like, they basically had like air traffic control in the Costco parking lot, which was funny to me, like armed guards like telling you where to park. And I just like wondered, like, when has like a parking situation gotten so bad that like they'd had to be resolved with the firearms? But hey, when in Rome, like
you use 2 parking spaces to park, here comes the machine gun.
Here comes the pain, sucker. No, it was cool, and I like it. And actually, I mean, it probably works more efficiently than what we have here at our Costco. It's a madhouse here. But yeah, that was kind of our week. I don't know if there's anything missing from our experience.
I mean, there was so much. It's hard to pack into a couple sentences, but
yeah, absolutely. This is just kind of like a summary of what happened. And in case you're wondering about Aeromexico and you're wanting to fly them, after our trip down, I basically said we're never flying Aeromexico again. But then on the trip back, it was like flawless.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think it kind of depends. I would say if you're going to fly Aeromexico, like a nonstop route to somewhere, you're going straight to your destination, not making any connections, no worries. if you are making connections, make sure you book them, especially if you're going through Mexico City. Book your connections with like 3 hours in between your flights.
Or you ain't going to make it.
Yeah, or you're not going to make it. But yeah, on the way back, it was a completely different experience than on the way there. And, you know, I was happy. So maybe we'll fly Aeromexico again, but probably not that trip. Just because it makes it a little bit tougher and a longer day. And I had one other thing I was going to say. Oh, so we, you know, on Tuesday night of that week, we had an interview, which was a long interview that was, you know, really awesome questions and just really, you know, the lead team getting to know us getting to know them.
There's a lot of just reflection on what's happened in our life.
Yeah, and like what God has done so far. And I think on probably another podcast, we'll talk more about like how we got to this point and how and why Guatemala. But this is kind of just like an overview to let you in on where we are in the process. And so, you know, on a podcast in the future, we will talk about like why we're doing this and why specifically Guatemala and not just right here and that kind of stuff. But
and not Africa, not India. We're choosing Guatemala.
Yeah. So we will get into that. But so we got back from Guatemala. And in the following couple days, we ended up getting accepted and asked to come on staff. And so we can officially say right now that we are on the track to become missionaries with Students International in Guatemala. So eventually we'll have, you know, links and that kind of stuff for you to check out if you want to possibly partner with us financially. And, you know, there's going to be a lot of changes coming. I will probably end up changing this podcast and website and everything to kind of reflect that, and we'll change directions a little bit.
It's like going from the show Cheers to Frasier.
It really is. Yeah, it's nice. I like it. And
I've never seen Cheers.
Me neither, but I liked Frasier.
Yeah, me too.
And so we'll use this podcast and YouTube and Facebook to keep you up to date on what we're doing and keep you informed. If you're wondering about the organization that we're going to be working with, it's called Students International. They're based out of Visalia, California, and their website is stint.com, I believe, not .org. I'm just going to type that in real quick to make sure. I don't want to give you the wrong address. It is stint.com. Yeah, Students International, stint.
Stint.
Yeah, .com. Anything else to say about that, baby?
Well, I just want to say that my favorite part of our trip was this little girl. I think she was like 5 or 6 years old. And she was like this just ball of fire, sassy little child who would like make faces at us and kind of talk back to us and run around, but in a cute way, like very adorable. And she uses it to her advantage. But then we were watching a little film with the kids about the Easter story or Holy Week stories, they call it. And she comes and like crawls up on my lap and then intertwines her fingers in mine. And it just like melted my heart. I'm like, oh, this sassy little child is being so sweet right now and just so cute.
The kids are cute. That's the thing. That's how they get you. That's how they wrangled us into this. The kids are cute. You can't say no to the cute kids. Mm-hmm. And so here we are. We're getting ready to go to Guatemala just because of how cute those kids are.
Well, there's other reasons.
There are. And we'll get into that as time goes on. But we just wanted to get you up to date a little bit on what's going on with the Arnettes. Of course, if you're on this, listening to this anywhere else, you can, of course, find us on Facebook, The Arnett Show, or our official website, thearnettshow.com. This podcast will, in the coming day or so, also be available on YouTube, so you can watch this on your TV if you have a streaming device or something. So that's exciting for you. Full audio quality, too, so that'll be fun. Any last words?
No, not any that I could think of.
All right. Thank you so much for listening. Again, thearnettshow.com and everything else, The Arnett Show. Thank you so much. Have a great whatever day this is for you.
Goodbye.